obviously ability for guests to speak is switched off for the meeting, just so that we are able to carry on without kind of lots and lots of background noise. But you can use the chat if you need to ask any questions. There will be specific time for asking questions at the end. So I'm going to get started, and we'll hopefully, I'm not anticipating that it's going to take the full hour. We will have time for some questions and to go through anything at the end. Also, I just want to say thank you to Miss Hughes, who's also joined me on here today. She's going to help with letting everyone in, answering any other questions, and will likely have to be my tech support at some point, as she always is. So thank you very much for giving up your Monday evening, everybody. But I think we all agree that it's quite an important topic that we're covering today. What I'm hoping to cover in the course of this presentation is 4 main areas. First of all, I'm going to just briefly share with you some key messages that have been shared with our Year 11 students. They have been shared in the first week of term when Mr. Edwards spoke to them after they received their results, and I also spoke to them briefly as well. Then those messages were around well-being and habits. I'm just seeing that there's some messages in the chat, so I'll just check those shortly. And then we are going to talk about organisation and the practicalities of revision, some revision methods that you might like to encourage them to try, and also where they can seek help and support. For anyone who's joined in the last couple of minutes, the meeting is being recorded and it will be shared, and a link will be shared tomorrow for how to access it afterwards. So, as I said, right at the beginning of term, myself and Mr. Edwards spoke to the Year 11s about their well-being really and habits for success for the next 6 months. We wanted to share a couple of those key points. Can I just check? Can everybody hear, or is there problems? Miss Hughes, can you hear okay?
Yeah, and you're getting lots of thumbs up.
Lots of people say okay. Okay. I'll carry on and I'll try and keep an eye on the chat, but if I need to stop, let me know. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. This brings back horrible memories from lockdown, trying to use this for lessons, but let's keep going. We powered through them. We'll power through now. So what we spoke to the students about in Year 11, but all of these messages are really, really important for Year 10 and Year 12 and 13, any students approaching revision as well, is that unless you get other habits right, then your revision isn't going to be optimized for success. So if you could be revising all the hours possible, but you could be really undoing some of that benefit through just your general well-being, habits and behaviours completely unrelated to the revision that you're doing. So the first thing that we spoke to them about was physical activity. So actually making sure that alongside the spending time revising, they are also making sure that they are spending time keeping physically active. What you'll see when the slide changes in a second is that there are actually some kind of brain activity images which show that a student's brain approaching a test is much more active following a 20-minute brisk walk than just 20 minutes of sitting down and not moving before the test. So you'll actually, you can see that it is important that although the students are heading into some really busy times with their revision, that they continue to keep active and allow some time for physical activity in their day. Going to restart the presentation. It seems to have stopped. And when we come on later to talk about actually how they could organise their revision, something that is really, really important is that they do make time to get out, to get some fresh air, and to get things like go for a walk, even if it's walking to the shop or taking the dog for a walk or walking around to their friend's house to do some revision. Even if it's those kind of things, then it's really, really important that they are getting out and about as well. What we don't want is students to be spending the next 4 months, 5 months solidly just revising, because that is not going to help anybody. Hoping the presentation will come back up now. Sorry everyone, for some reason it's decided to be incredibly slow at sharing. Let me just try one more way.
Miss Morgan Russell, would you like me to try and take control of the presentation, and then you can just tell me when
I'm just going to share it this way instead now. You can see it now, yeah? So rather than through Teams, I'll just share the window. Oh, there we go. Can you see it now? So this is the image that I was talking about, where you can see how after being physically active, the students for 20 minutes, the student's brain is much more has a lot more activity. So this fits in with thinking about the timing of their revision and how much time they spend, as I said, not just sitting doing the revision, but keeping active in their life as well. Mr. Edwards spent quite a bit of time talking to them about diet and nutrition, especially leading up to the exams. Now, obviously, we know we're not going to suddenly turn them, put them all onto a health kick. Sorry, it seems to have decided to go funny again. Sorry about this, everyone. Okay, I'll try and carry on and hope it doesn't kick me out again. Sorry about this. Technology is letting me down, but the the worst thing that we can see, and unfortunately we do see this at the beginning of the exams, is students arriving outside the exam hall with something like an energy drink, a packet of Haribo. Now I know this is, I'm sure everyone here, we all understand that that is not setting them up for success, but unfortunately the students, quite a few of them do think, well, I'm quite tired, I've been up revising all night, I need a boost of energy, and they turn to those kind of things. So we spoke to them about having slow release energy foods, things, keeping hydrated, things that will keep them full and keep their energy consistent, rather than spending going for that short kick, but then it starts cutting out after halfway through the exam and they get a lull in energy. We also talk to the students about sleep, and again it's very tempting for them to stay up late trying to cram in a lot of revision, but I think we all know, if we've ever tried that at any point in our life, whether it's with a work deadline or a revision, that cramming things in the middle of the night, it never works, and it's more important for them to actually get a good night's sleep before each exam. Also, though, if you have a look at the picture on the left-hand side, you can see that you can really only maintain successful revision, hard work, productive revision for 90 minutes maximum. And then you start to, your energy, your concentration, all of those things start to deteriorate. And any time after 90 minutes is not productive. So it's very, very important that the students understand that they need to be working in 60 to 90 minute slots for revision, giving themselves a break and then returning for another 60 to 90 minutes. So you can see there the ideal kind of laid out of 90 minutes and then a 20-minute rest. It could be a rest of if they have a slightly longer rest, it could be watching, something on the TV, watching a YouTube video or 2 or 3 YouTube videos, whatever helps them to relax, chatting to a friend, going on their phone. Although if they've been revising on a screen, I would say that it'd probably be good to have a break from screens, but just anything that they can shut off from work for that time and then return refreshed to do another slot of 90 minutes. So these are the messages that were shared with the Year 11s. We also did speak to them about stress and anxiety, and I think it's really important that the message that they were all given is that there is no way that anyone can approach the summer of Year 11 without feeling stressed and anxious. It is a stressful time. Everyone is going to be nervous. There's a lot to do. Some stress, some nerves is a good thing. It helps you to focus. It helps you to stay motivated. It kind of keeps you sharp. If it tips over into exhaustion and anxiety, which can't be calmed, a panic, then that's when they need to seek out support. And we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. But we also wanted to make it clear to them that feeling nervous and worried is perfectly reasonable in the situation they're in, heading into exams, especially it being their first set of public exams and not having gone through that before. So it is really reasonable that they might experience some nerves. It doesn't mean that they, it's an issue. It doesn't mean that they're kind of it's going to be to their detriment unless it gets to the point where they're not able to manage it themselves. And hopefully factoring in things like positive nutrition, staying hydrated, sleep, and making sure that they give themselves those breaks will help to minimize the issues around stress that they might find as well. So that was the key things we've talked about with them about keeping themselves well enough to revise well. And I'm going to be reminding them of those things in personal development on Wednesday this week as well, through their tutors, just to make sure that heading into the start of revision for Year 11 and Year 10 starting to think about their summer mocks when they come around, that those sort of messages are really important. You know, we do not want students to be revising so much that they make themselves unwell. We don't want them to be revising so much that it becomes counterproductive, but we do want them to think about how best to revise and how best to use their time. So the second thing I said I would talk about was organisation and practicalities and making the start on revision. Now, I will, you know, I'm an English teacher. You'll probably see that in some of the examples I'm going to show later, which are focused around revising for English. But it's I'm far from a scientist, so I'm sure lots of people who are on this call probably know a lot more about this than I do. But I have previously heard external speakers come into schools to speak about revision, and they talk to the students a lot about how their brain works and about how revision is about strengthening and building the connections in their brains that hold particular knowledge and abilities and skills that they will need in the exam. And the stronger those areas of the brain are, those connections, the easier it will be and the quicker it will be to utilise them in an exam, and the stronger chance you have of doing well in the exam, basically. Which kind of means that the key to successful revision is revisiting a topic frequently, repeatedly, and coming back to it again and again, which pretty much means that students need to be concertedly revising really from the beginning of their GCSE course, which sounds really silly, but if you imagine, if you start revision at this point in year 10, you've already covered over a term's worth of work. If you already every now and again revisit that work from September to Christmas of year 10, then you start revisiting other, you know, as you go along, you come back and you make sure you revise the things that you've just learned, and then you come back to it again for your mocks in November of year 11, and then again at this time of year, and again, say in April or May. That area of the brain has been strengthened. That piece of knowledge in your brain has been strengthened and you know, revisited and clarified and built on 4 or 5 times, rather than sitting here now or waiting until April and thinking, oh well, I've got my, you know, my first exam is English literature in a month's time. I'm going to study. I better dig out my notes on Christmas Carol from December of year 10, and then you've not done anything to strengthen that knowledge in your head for over a year, and it needs a lot of work then to make sure that you're confident in that. So if you're sitting here and you're a parent of the year 10, then it's really important to instill some of these habits now, I think, for the most success that to be the most successful you can. If you're a parent of the year 11, then I would say they need to be really now starting revision and concertedly revising topics, and putting aside time to do more than just the work that they're doing in school, and more than just the revision that they have, the topics that they're set for homework. So revision habits could start successfully from any point, really, and I just wanted to go through a couple of things about what that might mean. So as I said, start now, even if it's just a small chunk of time, 2 or 3 times a week as a starting point, putting aside that time for revision will be really, really important, because it's going to start building up that knowledge in their brain again, but B, will also get them into the habit of sitting down and revising. I also think that it's really important that students don't get distracted by revision at this point. Revision should be additional, and it's a very, very important additional thing, but it's not everything. We are still in school. If your child's in year 11, we're still in school right up until May, and it's vital that they take every single moment that they can in class, because that's a moment that they don't have to spend outside of class, is the message that I always say to them. You know, if they try really hard in class and in revision time that they're given in tutor time, you know, if they have other spare time in school when they might have games, but then they're taken to do a revision session, you know, break time revision sessions that they might be offered, all those kind of things. It's very, very important that they take all of that time and are not just thinking, well, I'll cover this when I get home, so I'm not going to bother trying in lesson. I would say from now, I would be getting them to put aside small chunks of time. So if they have evenings where they're freer, so they might do some clubs some days, or they might have, particular days that they go and visit other family members or friends. What I would do is say on the evenings when they don't have much on, maybe they do 2 chunks of 30 minutes or 1 hour long chunk. And then if they at the weekend now, I would be suggesting that they spend, half of one day at the weekend, or even just an hour or so on one day at the weekend, and build it up as much as possible. And that is for revision, and it's on top of homework time. So if they've set if they've got a piece of homework to do, they do that like normal, and then they're setting aside this other time now to revise. They should really I would say, prioritise the topics that they are least confident in, which is likely to be the work they covered in year 10. I know I was an absolute nightmare for this with my GCSEs, that I wanted to revise. I would happily sit and revise English, history, French, the things that I loved. I would happily sit and revise them for hours because I enjoyed it. Physics, I'm embarrassed to say I left till the night before the exam. And spent that afternoon and evening cramming, and that was the only concerted time I really spent on that topic because it was my least favourite subject. So I think that was a real issue. That was the wrong way about it for me, and I really learned from that because I felt very unsafe and unconfident going into my physics exam. So they need to prioritise things that they are least confident in. That would be their step 1 at the moment, making a list of the topics that they are most worried about, making sure that they've got all the notes and the old exercise books and the texts and the sheets and the pages that they need. And if they haven't, going and seeing their teacher and asking for help with getting that, because it's perfectly reasonable if somebody has misplaced an exercise book from year 10, but just ignoring that as an issue is not going to help. They need that. I always say to my classes, your exercise book is your revision guide. If you've worked hard on it and it's neat and tidy and you've done your work, you don't need to buy a revision guide, because your notes are just as good as any revision guide. So if they haven't got that, then there's things we can give them to fill that gap, but they need to draw our attention to that now. Again, a really important thing about while they're still in school and before the exams start, make use of staff help. Come and ask if they've got any questions, if they can't find any of their work. First step for me would be taking these slots of time and making revision cards, notes and posters that they can then come back to at a later date. It doesn't feel as pressured that, if they can do it using the computer, they can make them on paper, they can do them really boring or really colourful. I'll show you some examples in a minute, but they can, just making those notes now, flashcards, things like that is very, very important. So they've got all the resources as the time gets closer. And this is something that students could be doing from year 10. When they finish a topic, so I know in English recently, they've just finished A Christmas Carol, they could spend, half an hour a week for the next couple of weeks making some revision flashcards on A Christmas Carol while it's still fresh in their mind. And then they've got those, keep them safe, and then revisit them in the summer to prepare for the exams, the mocks, and then revisit them next year. Trying out different revision methods. I've really lost count of the times in my career that students have said, I sat for ages revising and it just felt like nothing was going in. But that might be because the revision method that they're trying is not working for them. So they need to be supported to try different methods, which is why we're going through these ideas now, and also going to share a lot of the slides of this PowerPoint with the students in personal development this week. So they've got homework at the moment still, like they might be doing Sparks homework for maths. Maybe after they've done the homework, they could make some revision cards or notes based on what they've covered in that homework, just to extend it and turn it into a revision activity. It's a chance for them now as well. They need to make sure they've got everything they need for revision. So do they want a big stack of notepads or flashcards or A3 paper for mind maps, whatever they need. If you guys can't get hold of it, get them to come and ask us. We can provide some things through school. And also setting up their workspace wherever is possible, even if it's on like a communal dining room table. Maybe there's a box they can use to keep their stuff in, to put under the table at the end of each day, but it's easy to find it all again and pull it out. And then I think if they try and make a revision timetable that stretches all the way from now until the first exam in May, that's not going to be helpful. You know, that's too far away for me to even think, let alone a teenager. But if they plan the next 3 weeks or 4 weeks of what they want to get covered, what free time they've got to do it, and what maybe methods they're going to try, and then towards the end of that, make a new plan for the next 3 to 4 weeks. It's not productive to try and plan out every single revision session between now and the exams. So the final thing is also what we call as teachers interleaving the topics. So not spending a whole week revising, cells in biology in every single spare minute, and then not coming back to that before the exam. Dotting the topic through the next few weeks, if it's a topic they're worried about, spending in half term, if they've got a couple of days, spending 1 hour on biology, but then also a bit of time on history or a bit of time on Spanish, and then mixing it up with a bit of maths, and then coming back to the topics again, because there's no point doing huge chunks of a topic and then not coming back to it for months on end, because that, as I said before, revisiting and frequently revisiting for short periods of time is a much better revision strategy. So these are some revision timetables that I found just online. We are going to be supporting the students to make one for half term this week in personal development. And what we're going to talk to them about is how to structure the week. I quite like the one on the left with the post-its, because it's flexible. So if they feel if their plans change, or they want to go back to a topic because they didn't feel they covered it enough, they can move things around. So that might be one way of doing it. They can obviously also just change it week on week. The one on the right is more probably the way I would personally do it, where they've blocked out time for themselves, for social events, social occasions, but then put in chunks of revision as well. So we are going to be helping them to make a revision timetable this week for half term, just to try out that as an idea. But what I would strongly recommend, if they're starting from scratch with revision now, I would strongly recommend making a list of topics they want to cover, the things they think they most need to revise, and then using that list to make a revision timetable when asked some 60 to 90 minute slots across the next 2 weeks that they can do those topics alongside their normal social events, alongside their activity, rest, getting an early night. But where are they going to put those things in? So the third thing, and I will stop talking for in a minute, I promise, that we're going to do is looking at revision methods. So there are countless ways to revise, but everyone's different, and students might already have started to find what works for them. I know personally, I tried lots of different things around my GCSEs. A-levels, I think I returned to kind of things that I found had worked well. And then by the time I got to my exams for 3 years of university, I was quite honed in the different techniques that I liked using, and that what I found worked for me. I know they're very different to other people that I worked with and lived with at the time. So it all is different. It's worth trying lots of things. So I'm going to give you a chance to do some revision here, or take in some knowledge. So I just looked up what famous events had happened on the 5th of February, as that was the day we were going to be meeting. And here is some key information about Sir Malcolm Campbell, who broke the land speed record on this day in 1932. So you've got 2 minutes to read through. I would be disappointed to hear if there was any cheating, of anyone taking a picture of the facts and using them, because there is going to be a quiz in a minute. But it's 2 minutes to just try whatever method you would use to try and take in as much information on this as possible. And then in 2 minutes, I'm going to give you a quick quiz. Okay, 2 minutes starting now. 30 seconds left. Okay, so using the information, I'd like you to jot down the answer to these questions if you can remember them. And then if you're brave enough, I'd like you to raise your hand if you feel confident that you can remember at least 3 answers from those pieces of information. You think, yeah, I can answer at least 3 of those questions confidently. Okay, so no one's raised their hand yet. We're either very shy or not confident on our answers. And to be honest, I'm not surprised. It's quite an obvious demonstration that I'm making, but one of the things that I think that students can get drawn into the trap of is, say, for example, you're revising a particular topic in history and you've got some printed out handouts, or you look it up online and there's a page, an internet page or a handout, or your own notes from class which look like this, and it's just dense text, text. But sitting and staring at a piece of text is not a way of taking in information. In English, in our English exams, the students have to read for English language 3 unseen texts across the 2 exams that they've never read before. And I lose count of the times, probably hundreds of times since 2010 when this exam came in, that students say to me, I just sit there and look at it and look at it and look at it, and it's not going in, and I can't answer any of the questions on it. So what I've always worked with the students on is doing what I'd call active reading. If they've got a piece of text, and obviously you couldn't do this because it was on a screen, and I'm not criticising anyone's knowledge of the land speed record at all. I'm sure that there are some people who know, well, lots of you probably know much more about it than I do. But presenting the information, if they've got a page of notes, a page of dense information, taking it and using colour, shorthand things like even just how I've put that title, land speed records times 9, 1924 to 1935. If they want to do it online on the computer using different font sizes, using images is so important. And these things, just breaking it up so they're not looking at a very, very dense piece of writing and just staring at it. Even if they took the previous piece of writing, highlighted it, underlined it, noted things down in the margin, it helps them to be active while they're taking in the information, and they are not just staring at a page of text. And that is really something that I would speak to your children about and say, when you're revising, are you just rereading over your notes and just sat staring at writing? Because that's not an effective way for very many people to revise. What helps is drawing images, using colour, underlining, breaking it down into shorter notes. My way of revising was basically taking a load of notes and making them into shorter and shorter and shorter versions of the same notes, so that they eventually became like a 1-page summary of a topic, and it would be just word prompts and images and colours that would spark off the knowledge that I'd taken in from making these notes over and over. It's quite a time-consuming way of doing it, probably not the best way, but it's what worked for me because I'm a writing and a word kind of person. But one of the things that Miss Hughes was talking to me about was that for students who maybe find literacy skills more challenging, or students with if your child's got special educational needs or additional needs that they might find, doing lots of very wordy topics quite challenging, then breaking it down by using images and chunking it down to the bare minimum of facts. So what you can see, like even where I just put that heading at the top, it's the minimum you would want someone to take away from that piece of information. So images, colours, highlighting, breaking down information is obviously going to be much more digestible for the students than just reading lots and lots of dense text. The next step on from that would be making things like flashcards, where again they're breaking down the topic. Now lots of students really like flashcards, like you can see on the right of the screen. So where they take a topic and they write the a word or a title on one side and then information about it on the other. And they're really good at actually bringing these into school and testing each other when they've got time in school. Things like it works really well for formula, for scientific processes, brilliantly for the quotations that we have to learn in English, and obviously for vocabulary in languages. The terminology in PE, in any of our technical subjects. So all these kind of using those cards, I think they really like that. And as I said earlier, the process of making the card is really effective as well. And you can see on the left, somebody's done something similar with a poster, making a poster and using the images and colour really clearly to visually show what those things are. So here, one other technique that I would recommend would be self-testing. So for the students, they can spend hours revising something, and then when they come back to class and they face a question on it, have realised that nothing has gone in. So quick quizzes like the one that I gave you on the information is a really good way of them making sure that their revision is working. And also, just if they keep getting the same question wrong, then they know that maybe that's something they need to go and speak to their teacher about. That's something that they're just not fully grasping, which happens to all of us. They can write the quiz themselves. I would suggest maybe if they're revising in the evening, they jot down kind of 10 questions about what they've learned as they go, and then test themselves the next morning or the next evening to see what they've retained. There are so many brilliant revision quizzes online. In a minute, I've got a slide with some revision apps on, but I'm a huge fan of BBC Bitesize. I mean, for English literature, it has broken down quizzes on about 5 or 6 quizzes on Macbeth, 5 or 6 quizzes on Inspector Calls, everything that you could ask for revising the text that we've got. I would strongly recommend using that. Past questions are widely available online, past exam questions. If it's for a longer question, such as in English, obviously we have 30-mark questions on literature, even longer ones on language for the writing tasks, they're not always going to have time to spend 45 to 50 minutes answering a question, but they can do a plan, and that's a really good practice as well. So I would say if they've been revising for Macbeth, then find an exam question online or in the ones that their teachers shared with them, and spend 10 minutes doing a plan of what their paragraphs would be that they would answer on, what quotes would they do, and then just review. Did I feel quite confident doing that plan? Do I think that that's, did I have lots of ideas, or was I really scrabbling around and couldn't really get much down? And that's a great way of doing it as well, because we do strongly recommend planning for longer exam answers. Testing each other with a friend, that's something that I found for my A-levels worked really well. Working with friends who did the same course, testing each other, each kind of taking charge of a particular topic and helping each other to revise those topics. They're really good. Students are really good now doing that over FaceTime or calling each other. I know 2 girls in my class in year 11s came in one day and they both had loads of notes on their poetry that we're studying, and they'd done the whole evening together on FaceTime, just going through the poems and making notes, which was brilliant. And using the flashcards as well as a way of testing themselves, kind of with, I've written a 1-word prompt on one side, what's all the facts about that prompt? But something that's really simple is just making a list of information, folding the page over and trying to write it on the other side. And it's really easy to check. So those kind of things, self-testing is the only way really they're going to know if their revision is working. I found, so one of the things that somebody was asking when I asked for feedback on what to cover was, how on earth do you revise like all the content that the students need to cover? And with the example of English literature. So in English literature, we study obviously 3 texts plus the poetry that we study. Then obviously students have all the different topics and all their other subjects on top of that. And the English literature exams are unseen. They don't have copies of the book, although they do have sections of the book printed in some of the questions for them. It's a lot to revise, and it's a lot to feel that they have to have very, very good knowledge on each one. One thing I always say to them is you don't have to know the whole book inside out. You can, take what you do know and adapt it to the question. They do print some of the information and some of the book for you, so you can get your quotes from there if your mind goes completely blank. But the way that I managed to revise for my A-level literature, where we had to had closed book exams as well, was what I call revision by osmosis. So I didn't consciously sit down and revise the quotations. What I did was I made some revision posters. They didn't even have to be that flash. If the students want to, they can just be on post-it notes. They can spend time making them quite nice and colourful. I think that does help. But if they want to just write them on post-it notes, and then I just stuck them around everywhere that I went. This probably will be infuriating to you as families over the next few months, but everywhere that I went every day. So around the mirror in my bedroom, on my wardrobe door, next to my bed, in the bathroom, if there's room, anywhere that the students are going all the time, even if it's, somewhere that they are, where they brush their teeth or brush their hair, or where they stand when they're making a cup of tea. They're looking at the quotes and they're going in. They're not making any conscious effort, but they go in and they retain them. And they will be surprised how much they retain just through having them around them at all times. This works for formulas, for maths, for keywords, for science, any other subject where there is lots of key technical vocabulary, any like computer science, like PE, any of those subjects. Vocabulary, again, I did this for my German A-level as well, just posted, and if anyone knows German, there's like lots of cases and tenses that you have to learn, and there were just posters of that all over my house, and it was, I got it and it went in through very little effort. And I think that is a key technique that they can use, that also means that the revision is not very much effort, but happening all the time and being revisited all the time. Memorizing things, I was going to do an example of this, but we are running out of time, so I'm going to miss it. But one way is that if a student has a particularly visual memory, then if they've got a process to memorize, a scientific process, for example, or the different stages of a study in psychology, thinking about a journey that they take, such as their walk to the bus stop or to school every day, and placing the different parts of that process at that journey. So I will leave my front door, then I think about the first part of the process. I go to, round the corner, that's where I think about the next part of the process. Linking it to something very familiar is really, really effective. Same with the idea of a memory room. These are not my ideas. These are things that I've heard people present before, and you can find out about them online. But thinking about a room with objects in the room, all representing the different things that they need to remember for that topic, and closing their eyes and thinking about being in that room, linking the objects to the different parts of the process, makes it clear in their mind. If they're more of a narrative word type person like myself, coming up with a story that covers the knowledge that they need to learn. So that's why people panic about learning the quotes and the information for literature, but students will always remember what happens to Scrooge. They will always remember what happens to Macbeth, because stories are memorable. So if you're trying to remember some terminology for the different levels of the Earth's atmosphere, or different geological things for geography, then actually coming up with a story that is completely unrelated but contains those words in it is really helpful, because then you can think through that story and you remember the words in a particular order. As I said, we were going to try and to learn how to count in Japanese, because this is something that somebody talked about on my teacher training. and they taught us to count to 10 in Japanese by telling us a story of this man playing golf, and each of the parts of the story contained the words for the numbers in Japanese. And I actually have always remembered the first 4 numbers, particularly the first 2, because they talked about during his game of golf he had an itchy knee, which are the first 2 numbers, which he scratched with his golf club. And that visual story stayed in my head, has stayed in my head for a very, very long time since I did my PGCE. But that kind of thing is really helpful for students where they're finding learning processes and orders of things more challenging. Practice papers and questions, using exam board websites, speak to teachers. So a letter will have gone out or is going out that explains that a number of revision resources are going to be put onto Teams for each subject, including revision videos, but also papers and materials that they can use. As I said before, students have their old exercise books, which are a great resource, which I think they sometimes forget about and don't realise. They've done practice questions before, so they'll have them in there. And as I said, writing a plan, first sentence, first paragraph. If you write 1 paragraph of an answer, I'll be able to give you feedback on that, just as good as if you wrote the whole answer, really. Or do the first paragraph, come in, get the feedback, and then carry on writing it. Unfortunately, we all know they're very adept at screens and using apps and their phones. It's impossible to get their phones off them. And really, I would suggest that they kind of try and use a blended way of revising. So there are going to be times, quite a lot of the time, when it would be best for them to leave their phone with you while they're revising, so they can focus on doing a past paper, using written notes, producing revision posters, those kind of things. However, I can't deny the fact that there are amazing things on their phones which are a resource for revision. There are YouTube videos. Again, from my perspective for English, there are brilliant YouTube videos. We are going to be sharing for each subject either YouTube videos or revision videos made by Cox Green staff that we would recommend students using, so you know they'll be reputable. And there are great revision podcasts out there. I know some of our departments have made podcasts, but there are loads out there as well for students. They can create their own voice notes for themselves. If they like talking, they can talk into their phone about what they've just learned and then listen it back to it themselves another time. And using revision apps like Quizlet and Padlet, those kind of things. There's loads out there. They probably know more than me, but there will be times when just half an hour on their phone they can actually use productively for revision as well. So final thing before the chance for questions, and I'm sorry to have talked at you so much, but I hope there's been something that you can take away that is helpful. But if students do start to feel overwhelmed, do start to find that the anxiety is outweighing the nerves and it's becoming an issue and it's making them unproductive, becoming an emotional problem, then we would obviously urge them to come and speak to us to get support before it gets any worse. You can contact us directly, or the students can come and speak to us. I would recommend they speak to their form tutor or their class teachers if it's a particular issue in one subject. If they're in year 10, if they're in year 11, obviously there's Mr. Firkins and Mrs. Phelps. If they're in year 10, Mr. Aston and Mrs. Phelps, and myself as the Key Stage 4 overseeing Key Stage 4 at any time. If students don't feel comfortable to come and talk to us, they can email beheard@coxgreen.com, and then a member of the SAFE team will pick that up, and the relevant person will speak to them and offer them support. It's a great way for them to reach out without having to speak in person to someone if they're finding it difficult to articulate how they feel. And there are online counselling and wellbeing services such as Kooth, who offer chat facilities. You can text them. Students can speak to other people their own age or trained young adults who are a little bit older who are trained in counselling, who can offer them support as well. So there's lots of things out there, and we do not want, as we're all aware, there's a balance to be had between pressure and motivation and anxiety. So if anyone starts to become worried that their child is not coping with the stress of the exam, please do get in touch with us straight away. So there's an opportunity now. If you've got any specific questions that are relevant to everyone, to write them in the chat, and I'll try and address them in the next few minutes. Apart from that, then if you have a specific question about your child, and a couple of people did email specific things, and I've passed them on to the relevant teachers, but if you want to ask anything general about revision or anything about how best to support our young people, then please do put it in the chat now. If you are done, please feel free to leave, and thank you so much for coming on. It's been lovely to see so many people and to know that the students are getting so much support from home. And so thank you very much for your time, and as I said, we'll send around the link tomorrow to the recorded version. What I will do is I'll just put my email address into the chat in case, so it's easy for, it probably is easy to access anyway, but just in case, so that you can send any specific questions to me and then I can deal with them tomorrow or send them on to the right person.
Hi, Miss Morgan Russell. There's a question asking if the slides can be emailed.
I think that should be fine. I'll see if they can be emailed out when we send the link to the video tomorrow. Thank you. Okay. If there's no specific questions other than those being emailed, I'll just end the meeting now. But thank you again for your time, everyone, and have a lovely evening. Thank you.